Hi, Holly.
Hi, Marcin. How are you?
I'm okay. Waiting for the session.
I know. Our last session went really well. It went a little bit long, but it went really well.
The previous one, you mean? Thank you.
Yep, our session one.
Yeah.
Yeah, I'm just double checking who is in your session this time.
Well, I just want to say, Holly, that Katarzyna would like to say a word of excuse to everyone here because she had a funeral of some close person, and unfortunately she could not be attending our session. So
I'm so
we will not
sorry.
be having one of the papers.
Okay. Oh, I'm so sorry for her loss.
Yeah, it happens. Me too, but I just wanted to inform you so that you know about it.
Of course. Thank you. Yes, of course. No problem. That actually probably worked well because last time, like I said, we went a little bit over because there's some questions. And so, any extra time is probably good. So
Maybe, yes. Good morning,
so
Sonja.
Hello. Yes, I made it.
Yeah.
So what I did in the last one, you guys, is so I don't know if you both know Michelle Revelati. She is our other tech support.
Hello,
She is
Michelle.
our Zoom hero.
Hello.
And
Hello.
so we're just both gonna be in the background the whole time. We'll turn off our cameras, but we're both gonna be here. If you need anything, you can private message one of us, and I'll let the other speakers know this when they jump on. But what I did in my last session is I just was going to have you guys all if you have slides that you're going to share, just if we can put them up now, just to make sure that they're going to work fine, and we can just each test them. So Marcin, if you want to go first, if you have slides, and that way we just aren't dealing in the middle of the meeting and something coming up.
Well, personally, I will not be having slides, just a couple of introductory words for this session, but maybe Sonja would like to double check and make sure the slide sharing works. I don't know. We maybe could do it now if.
Yeah, sure. That shouldn't be a problem. So let's
Yeah.
Good.
Awesome.
After
the ones that
works.
have issues.
Yeah, we see your slides,
yeah.
Sonja.
There you go.
Perfect.
Great.
Okay, I'll stop.
Thank you.
Perfect.
And,
I know those rarely ever have issues, but I'm a little bit of a pre-planner, preemptive strikes, make sure that anything isn't working beforehand.
Yeah.
So
we are waiting for Sylwia, Ania, and Justyna and Marysia. So
yes.
the other presenters should join us soon, I hope.
Perfect.
Yep.
Oh, and there they are, Maria. Yes.
Maria Pietrzak, Maria Pietrzak, yes.
Pietrzak, is that right?
Pietrzak, you should pronounce it, but Polish names are difficult to be pronounced properly. I understand it. No worries about it.
Yes, I'm all for ask people how to pronounce their name, and if you have to do it a couple of times till you get it right, I'm all for it.
Yeah.
But I have been reading the last names here, and I was like, I'm glad I'm not having to introduce everybody. I don't want to butcher names.
Good.
Hey.
Good afternoon, Sylwia. How are you? You have to unmute yourself. You are muted.
Yep. That's the keyword of 2020, right? Unmute yourself.
Yes, you are right. Oh.
Perfect. So we have one more person joining, a few people coming in as guests, but they'll stay in the waiting room.
Yeah. So Marysia will join, and also Ania and Justyna.
Okay, as speakers?
As speakers, I think. Yes. I'm not sure if Ania will maybe be presenting on behalf of her and Justyna, but we will ask. Okay. I don't know.
Perfect. No problem.
What is the weather like in Reno today?
Beautiful.
Nice.
Yeah. It's sunny. I've got my windows open.
I see. I've seen the weather forecast for Las Vegas like a week ago. It was like, very hot.
But you've been here, right? You've been in Reno?
I've been in Reno and in Vegas as well. Yeah.
Because I mean, that's the thing. We always get that here. They're like, oh yeah, Las Vegas. And I'm like, Las Vegas is actually really far away from here. So the weather in Las Vegas is not the weather in Reno. It's also we're like what, about 4,000 feet higher or something in elevation. So
close to the mountains.
Yeah. So we are closer to San Francisco as far as distance goes than Las Vegas, but people always go like, oh yeah, Las Vegas. I was like, yeah, no,
not the same.
I can make it in 6 hours, but most people don't make it in 6
Dang, Sonja.
Yeah, I also get
That's a fast drive. For reference, Marcin, that should be a 7 to 8 hour drive.
Yeah. I mean, anyways, I miss very much Reno, and because Reno is really a quiet place. I like quiet places, and this is something very beautiful about your town. I think.
Oh, thank you. We think so. It's a good little gem. It's a nice little gem.
Yes. We don't want people to know how nice it is here, really.
Yeah.
No, all the Californians have figured it out, though.
Unfortunately, right?
Coming in hordes.
Yeah, but they do really love Tahoe, right?
Yeah.
So they bring some good.
I've been starting to play this game with my students because I'm getting bored with Zoom. Everybody is. So now I change my background every time, basically. And I let them guess where I'm at. So I figured I'm going to do this here too. I'm pretty sure you guys know where I'm at, right? The people in Poland, they should know. Some of you should know.
Are you flying? Are you flying in the sky?
No, I'm on a high building. I'm on a balcony in a building right now.
Oh,
where is it? Where is it?
It's not Poland.
No, it's not. But it's close. It's closer than Reno. It's closer to Poland than Reno is to Poland.
Reno is.
It's closer to Poland than Reno is to Poland.
Yeah, it's actually it's. You should. Yeah, you'll figure it out. I know you guys know that place.
In Liverpool, they have a really big, tall thing like the Space Needle behind you.
The whole thing. Probably it's Berlin.
Yes. Yeah.
Good work, Marcin.
Thank you.
My students figured it out too. It took them a while, but they did figure it out.
Yeah, the world becomes the one place. And look, like we have had the previous session with Mehmet, and some of you maybe participated in that. Like, so with those labs at universities and business schools collaborating across the world, right? So I am a big fan of such global mindset. And so I'm always smiling when I think and talk about such things. Because there is so many similarities between people in different countries, right? And and especially in the world of academia.
So I just figured out, actually, I went into the right time zone. I've been in Berlin. It's the same time zone, so that's good.
That's the same time zone. Yeah. Now it's like it's getting, the night is coming, right? So the sky becomes dark. So it's so that because that's where my family is at. So I always know that time difference, the 9-hour time difference. I have that down because I know exactly what time it is. Yes, we have a 9-hour time zone. So when you fly down to Reno, you can expect a big jet lag.
It's worse the other way, the other direction. I hate.
The other direction is tragedy.
Flying to Europe, I'm just like 1 week. It's just, oh man, it takes so long.
So,
I'm not used to it anymore either.
No, right? We're out of the habit of it. I'm as soon as I go back to traveling, getting on those planes.
Right. What is that?
I miss that.
So what was the answer? Sorry, I missed that part. I had to take a call.
Berlin.
It's Berlin.
Oh, okay. Yeah, I kind of like recognize that. Is that like the TV tower at the background? Yeah.
Alexanderplatz.
Isn't that, but that used to be on the, eastern side, right?
Yes, yep.
I remember, yeah.
Mhm.
Okay, I will maybe, I see some.
So by the way, I just wanted to say hi, but I have to go to the other session because I have 2 students presenting there. So I just need to kind of like, go there and take notes and stuff. So, but, I'll go back and forth. So,
Okay.
yeah. So just letting you know.
Perfect.
we'll
Yeah, the
see you.
last one went really well, Mehmet. We didn't have any issues, no tech issues or anything. So
Okay, great to know about that. Yeah, the one that I had in the morning was like very good. It went very well. Finished on time. And I thought that the opening session was okay. I mean, we were sweating a little bit because Brian Sandoval came was coming a little later, right? So as you probably seen that well, I had to kind of like add stuff to as fillers and what can you do, right? So these things you need to think on your feet, right? So
Yeah.
okay, I'm gonna jump to the other station.
Okay.
So I'll see you again though. I'll be back.
We'll see you.
See you.
all right, awesome. We have a few people coming in now. We'll wait to get started though still.
Okay.
I'll wait till 11.
Frank should know where I'm at. Where am I?
And exactly, I will let everybody in as well. So I'll let all the audience in just so you guys know,
Sure.
Marcin, I'll just
Yeah,
let you know I'm opening it to everybody. And then you can kick off and I'll kind of leave it to you to guide through between speakers and at the end and stuff. But again, we'll be in the background if you guys need anything,
Okay.
any tech issues, private chat us if anything comes up, myself or Michelle. And it looks like we've got a couple people in the waiting room now. But again, I'm going to give it one more minute just to let it fill up a bit. So what I do, Marcin, is I'm just going to let you know that I'm open the waiting room and I'd give it, 10, 15 seconds just to see till the numbers teeter out, people come all the way in, and then go ahead and start. Of
Okay, thank you.
course.
Ania,
Frank, you like my background?
He knows
Yeah.
exactly what it is.
Yeah, he knows where I'm at.
All right, well, we only have a couple people in the waiting room, but I'm just going to go ahead and open it anyways. Last time we had about 15 people filtering as the minutes went on at the beginning. So we'll go ahead and open it. And again, just let us know if you need anything. Good luck, everybody.
Okay, now it works. Excuse me for a little bit of delay with the start, some problems with unmuting, but now I hope you can hear me and see me. And thank you very much, Holly, and the other guys from UNR for the perfect management of the session. If something is going wrong as regards the technicalities or anything like this, please let us know. So it's my pleasure to be chairing this session number 3 of our third joint symposium and webinar between UNR, the School of Business at UNR, and SGH Warsaw School of Economics. Today, now, we are about to launch our session on the following topic: COVID-19, the economy and the business environment. So I would like to give the floor to our respected speakers today. We will be having one paper from Sonja Pippin from the UNR, the accounting team. Then we will also have a speech by Pietrzak and Sylwia Frydrych, and also Anna Masłoń-Oracz and Justyna Jarząbska from our end, SGH Warsaw School of Economics. Unfortunately, I would like to give you a word of excuse from Ms. Katarzyna Kacperczyk, but for personal reasons, she can't be with us today. She attended a funeral of some close person, so we understand she can't be with us today, unfortunately. Undoubtedly, the COVID-19 pandemic is impacting a lot how we do business, how our economies work across the world, and I hope that I have no doubt that the papers and presentations which will be delivered today will be an interesting starting point for some further discussion. And I have no doubt that we will get to know some interesting insights about how to, what are the, how is the environment for doing business looking like today, and how we are running businesses these days. Okay, so without further ado, I would like to give floor to our first presenter, Sonja Pippin from the accounting team, College of Business, University of Nevada, Reno. And Sonja will tell us a little bit about new approaches to taxation, I understand. So can taxation help us limit some differences and inequalities in the world? So Sonja, the floor is yours. We are waiting for your paper as the first one today.
Okay, thank you so much. I'm going to share my screen. That's supposed to be working because we tried it earlier and it worked earlier. So hopefully this works. And also real quick, because I'm supposed to only talk for 12 minutes, I'm going to start my timer here. So I have the timer on. Hopefully that will help with keeping the time short, or keeping my presentation short. Before I get started, thank you so much for the nice introduction. You probably overpromised a little bit of what I'm going to talk about. This is a very, very, very big topic, as you all know. So obviously, I'm not going to answer the question. I can't, and I don't think anybody really can. This is more, it's really got to be more like a research proposal than a real paper. So I'm just gonna come up with some possible approaches. I have a little bit of data, and I'm very much looking forward to your input and comments, how to look at this issue, maybe from a different angle than it's been looked at before. So let's see if this works. Yes, awesome. So can new taxes reduce inequality? Well, a common sense approach would say yes, right? I mean, if you make, we know how taxes work. If you make them very progressive, especially on income, it should reduce inequality. Or if we introduce some really, really high wealth transfer taxes, common sense would say, yeah, sure, it should reduce inequality. That makes sense. Either income or wealth inequality should be going down. On the other hand, we also know that individuals or corporations for that matter with high net income and a lot of wealth, they have a lot more means to escape taxation. They are more mobile. They can move their assets. They can employ some weird tax strategy, tax consulting, whatever. So maybe it doesn't work that well. And then there's also some data out there that says, well, you know, taxes, yeah, we have them, but inequality really hasn't gone down. So we don't know if it really works. So of course, then the real answer is maybe, or it depends, which is kind of the answer to pretty much any research question you can throw out there. So it's possible, but maybe, maybe not. We don't know. Why this question? And actually, even more specifically, why this question right now? And that's kind of where the tie-in to the session topic comes in. Concerns about inequality obviously are not new. There is, for example, the 17 UN nation goals of sustainable development have one goal that says reduce inequality globally. That's goal number 10. The World Bank, IMF, I mean, we've seen those calls out there. It's been looked at. There is an increased concern about inequality going up in recent years. And this is where the tie-in comes to the session topic. It's kind of, I mean, it's not obvious, but we have a lot of indicators that say, and it also kind of makes sense, just a common sense topic, that the COVID-19 pandemic has increased inequality, right? Because the lower income, the people that have nothing have been hit harder than the people that can somehow escape. They have more ways of protecting themselves. And actually, in fact, the really rich people, there's a lot of evidence out there that shows the really rich people actually got even richer because they don't really know where to put their money right now. Let me see. Yeah, I have time. I'm gonna show you real quick. So I hope this works. I don't know if any of you have seen this. This is a really cool, this is when I was, you know, doing some research for this paper and just in general, because this topic interests me, has actually interested me for a long time. I came across this World Inequality database. So let's see if I can. If I click on this, and then I think I need to do a new share to show you, maybe. Let's see. I hope you guys can see this. So this is yes, okay. So this is a web page. It's a World Inequality database, and they have data, they have graphs, they have policy briefs, they have all kinds of information on there that's really interesting. And so, for example, if you go over here to world, and then you can click on various key indicators, you can actually see what the world looks like right now. And then you can also go to prior years, like for example, so this is what it looks like right now with low inequality, not surprisingly, in Europe, Australia, and I guess Greenland. Okay, there's nobody there. And then high inequality, obviously South America and southern countries in Africa. And then if you go back, you can go like look at a prior year, let's say 80, just for grants. Looks quite different actually. It's interesting. It went, so inequality went up in some countries and down in others since 1980. Anyway, so I'll go back to my slides.
Interestingly, probably Sonja, it went up in the United States of America for the last 30 or 40
it
years.
did, yeah. And so there's actually some controversy about that it really depends on how you measure it in the end. But if you use a lot of different metrics, overall, it kind of looks like it did go up. It went down sort of during the 20th century, but then it went back up, and it's kind of going up in recent years, decades overall. And that's why we're concerned, right? And then of course, this is also where it gets really political, right? When everybody agrees that some inequality is okay, right? We don't say we don't want none. We want some, but where is the limit, right? So that's when is it bad, when is it good? So it is concerning but we don't know when we reach the concerning level. And then also, you know, what's really the concern is that it goes up, right? We don't want it to go up. That's kind of where we're at right now. So why this question right now? Because it's been going up and the pandemic has actually exacerbated that. So what's also interesting, and this is why I'm asking this particular question, is that every time when we talk about inequality, tax proposals get thrown out. A lot of organizations and countries and around the world, and I should say world, not word, sorry about that, propose taxes to combat inequality. I know that, for example, because that's where I'm from, in Switzerland, there are some proposals out there. Switzerland is actually currently not taxing capital gains, which I find interesting. To me, that seems like, why wouldn't you tax capital gains? But they're not. But they're proposing introducing a capital gains tax. In the United States, obviously, we had the elections last year, and a lot of the tax proposals by the Democrats include some sort of increased progressivity. Bernie Sanders, of course, but also Elizabeth Warren and others had something in it that says, well, we need to increase income tax on high income, high wealth individuals to reduce inequality. Then internationally, we have the IMF, World Bank, United Nations, OECD, all kinds of policy briefs, and at least one aspect is always taxes. You got to do something about taxes to reduce inequality. So that's another reason why I'm asking this question. Now, the problem is that we don't have a lot of data, and that's where I'm at. So this is kind of like where I'm at right now. I want to ask the question. I want to know how to look at this differently. I don't really know what the best data is to do this. So I just said, okay, let's go ahead and look at what's out there. And OECD has a great database on taxes, so I always start there. It's my favorite tax database. Yeah, I have favorite tax databases. That's me. So I start there and I looked at what do they have, what kind of metrics do they have, and I just picked the countries for which I got all the data that I wanted. And at this point, it was just 26 countries. So that's not very many, but at least some. And again, no time series for right now because the inequality metrics, it's like they don't really change that much over time. So you can't really do an annual one. So I figured for right now, let's just no time series. We can always add those later. Obviously, that would help with power a lot. So for the inequality, I just picked 4. One is the Gini coefficient, and 2 of those, one an average and one's the latest year that's available. Then 1 percentile, where you have the income at the 90th percentile compared to income at the 10th percentile. And then one where the wealth owned by the top 1% of the population. So I just picked 4. There are more out there. I think the Gini coefficient is kind of a given, and also including wealth and income inequality also makes sense. So there's like, for right now, there's just 4 in there. Tax metrics, I looked at all the taxes for which I could get data, of course, that have some sort of relationship with reducing inequality. So for example, estate and gift taxes, right? If you have high estate and gift taxes, that should reduce wealth inequality. Capital gains taxes at individual and corporate level, taxes on dividends, combined, because sometimes you have taxes on dividends at the corporate level and at the individual level. So there's a combined tax rate on that. And then some top marginal and statutory tax rates at the individual level. The last thing I did, and this was just out of curiosity, and I think that's where I would like to focus on more, is I throw in culture, because I just kind of have this feeling that culture could matter more than people think. So, because you can throw all the taxes on there that you want. If people actually kind of believe that it's okay to have this inequality, maybe nothing will change. So I don't know, I'm just throwing this in there. So a whole bunch of stuff with statistics. We don't need to go through all of them. You can see them here, mean, median, minimum, maximum for all of those. I actually also threw in GDP per capita, just for the latest year available, just out of interest, what it would do. And so here we go, more summary statistics. I'm getting towards the end of my time, so I gotta go to the results. And of course, this is, so for each of those, so at the top, you see the dependent variable. I just did regression for right now. Obviously, there are other metrics you could use, some more fancy type of analysis. But for now, I just used the regression. The two Gini ones, the P90 and P10, and then the wealth. And what you see here is really kind of not much significance. And by the way, basically the only thing that's really significant is the intercept. So the R-square metric is pretty high. It's like 70 or 80 or something for all of those. But the only thing that really matters is the intercept. All the other ones are not very significant. Culture only matters kind of for the percentages, and it gets it down, which is also kind of weird because you would think more individualistic countries would have a higher inequality. So that's odd, and it's only like marginally significant anyway. The corporate capital gains tax, it's all across the board, really. I mean, it's not just that there's very little significance, it's also that it doesn't really make any sense in which direction we're going here, right? Some reduce inequality, some increase inequality. Like, why would corporate capital gains tax increase inequality by this much, right? It just seems really weird. And so to me, that's an indicator for two things. One, very low power, and I'm aware of that. So obviously I would need more data. And two, maybe we're just not looking at the right thing here. Maybe this is not really what we need to look at. Maybe there's something else that explains inequality better than these different taxes. Or maybe there's an interaction. So that's another thing that I'm thinking could possibly
Sonja,
matter.
I'm sorry to be interrupting, but I have to manage time. I forgot.
I know, I'm almost done. I have like two more slides,
because...
but I can go right to the last slide here. So I already said this, very little impact. It looks like we're all across the board, and obviously data limitation. So here's my outlook. And this is where I'm looking forward to maybe some input from you guys, some questions and comments and some ideas. Taxes don't seem to matter much, but maybe they do. Maybe we just need to look at them differently. And there's some other possibilities that might help more to reduce inequality. Like, for example, broaden tax base so the government has money to then do stuff like they do in some of the Scandinavian countries, right? Stuff like that. Education, minimum wage proposals, healthcare, big one here in our country, here in the United States, right? So, and maybe we need to throw those in there in the equations to see if they matter more, those kind of social transfers or something like that. Okay, so I know I'm over time, so I'm gonna stop now, and I look forward to your comments and questions. Thank you for listening to me. And I'll stop sharing.
Thank you, Sonja. It was a very interesting and insightful presentation. I am sure that we have questions, but please, let's arrange our meeting in such a way, our session in such a way that we will start with all the presentations, and then we hopefully have time for Q&As. So guys, please wait with your questions till the end of the presentations. But again, Sonja, thank you very much. And we will, without further ado, introduce the next speaker today, who is Mrs. Maria Pietrzak. Maria works at SGH Warsaw School of Economics, and interestingly, apart from her research and teaching experience, she is also involved in non-government organizations, where he also is president of a foundation. So quite a diverse experience of her. Maria, we would like to ask you kindly for presenting your paper. The floor is yours.
Can you hear me now? Okay.
Yes.
Okay, so hello everyone. Thank you very much for the possibility to be with you here. My speech is about startups, of course, and the COVID era, but I would like to make a kind of space for cooperation, and I'm very happy that Sonja was talking about that as well. So today I would like to Oh, yes. Answer 3 questions. The first one is, can startups win in the COVID era? The second one is, how can startups win? And how can a new economy lab boost further international cooperation in academic entrepreneurship? And well, today I had an interesting situation in my own life. Because in the morning I hoped that we would have another sunny day, but it was raining. And my first thought was, oh no, I wanted a sunny day. But then it turned out that there is no water in my tap, in our taps, in all of them. So I thought, great that we have some rain because we can gather some water. And so in a very few minutes, I thought that I was happy that it was raining. And I think the same is with COVID. We should learn to see the COVID as a kind of opportunity for everyone. We should see as here we've got the waterfall. Waterfall is something beautiful. The water here is fantastic. We want to see it. We are happy to see it. That wasn't so nice. It's also water, but it's not nice. It's we don't like it. And but everything depends on how we look at things. So I think it's very important that we help startups and also our students to see COVID-19 as a real chance. And why it's so important to help startups to see the COVID as a chance, why they are capable of taking COVID-19 as an advantage, because they are agile. They should be agile, and it's their, well, it's their genome to be agile. Also, being lean is something that is connected with being agile and being a startup. The focus on innovation. And now in the COVID era, we are searching more and more for innovation. So startups are just ready to be the winners of the COVID era. And also they think globally. We are more and more global because of COVID. I have heard that because of COVID, we are 5 years faster in digitalization, at least 5 years. So such a pace of digitalization just in 1 year. And I think that our startups are also aware of the VUCA reality, the fact that the world is changing, that we cannot think too much about what was what were the conditions, what was in the past. We should be more thinking about what it is now and about the future. So and be very open to that and flexible. So how can startups win? The second question. I think it's very important and interesting that today we've got the Earth Day, and I think it's also a kind of direction for us. I just got a few questions about our today's reality. Maybe you know how many face masks we use every month. 130 billion every month, which is a terrible waste for me. My second question for you is just so that you know why we should concentrate more on Earth, is how much food is wasted every year by an average European. It's 173 kilos, so it's once again, I think, a lot. And on the other hand, how many people are malnourished globally? 815 million. So I think that those sustainable development goals are a natural direction for startups nowadays. We should help startups to concentrate more on those sustainable development goals. And I'm very happy that Sonja was also talking about that. it shows that that's the real direction for us. And today I was also taking part in a conference about what customers think about those sustainable development goals. And they think that in Poland, that was about Poland, that they would like to achieve that, especially the third goal, which is good health and well-being. But also all the others are very important. And I think that because of our cooperation, we should especially aim at that partnership for the goals. Startups should concentrate even more on SDGs. They were concentrated on them. They have started to concentrate even more. But I think that they are those key elements in that SDGs game, if we can say so. And how can New Economy Lab boost further international cooperation in academic entrepreneurship? Because of the fact that the world is more and more connected, we can have international, multinational, global meetings like today without many problems. So I think we should help them strengthening cooperation. I now cooperate with a lot of students from Africa and Asia, and they are ready. They're just waiting for me telling them that we are starting an international project. So I was very happy today to listen to Carl. He was also talking about that we should help students to understand better their customers, students, the start-uppers, and also interpret the data and communicate the data. I think that they have the problem with a lot of data around us. We all have problems. We are overloaded by data, and it's important to take the most important one. So I think we should help them to do that. And I was also listening to Mehmet, and he was talking about those labs. And I think we should do that in those labs, help them to understand better our world and customers and interpret the data. And I think we need more spontaneous joint projects of faculty, business, and students. So afterwards, I will send you a link to an open board so that we can afterwards, today, even start doing something together, not just talking and sharing our views, but doing something really. And focus more on emotional intelligence. The psychologists say that now, because of the pandemic time, people are having real problems with emotional intelligence, a lot of depressions. And also today I've learned that over 70% of our society, the Polish society, think that COVID is a problem, that we are having real problems, that the world is going to the end. So I think it's very important to help people to work on that emotional intelligence so that they think about how to be innovative and not how to go to the end. And focusing on individual talents and individual development paths. Mehmet was also talking about that accompanying students with their development help, and students want it. I was talking to them many times this month, to my students, international students, and they are very eager to have some individual help with their development path. So I think we should also give them more hands-on experience, and Mehmet was also talking about that, more international networking and partnerships. We've got the chance now because we can be all over the world. So more international networking and partnerships, and also getting them prepared for lifetime learning. Carl was also talking about that, and that focus on SDGs. I would also like to mention what I've heard today, that's part of a new spot in Poland. You don't have to be the best, you don't have to earn more, you don't have to be a professor, but you have to be a part of an SDGs team. And I think it's very important that we do it as well. And so learning that everyone is an individual, but very interesting, as you can see, seeing that individual beauty of everyone and also individual talent, but making it a global thing and connecting that. So let's create an open board. I will send you in a minute the link to the open board, and I hope that we will really start doing something more than just meeting from time to time and sharing our views. So thank you very much, and I hope for longer and more intensive cooperation.
Maria, thank you very much for your very insightful and I think very optimistic presentation and with some agenda for us. So you are really proposing things which you can do, which is so meaningful. But we will let us return to this after the two more presentations, because undoubtedly there is a lot of questions which we want to ask you. Thank you very much. And now I would like to invite to the floor Sylwia Frydrych. And Sylwia will take us a little bit to the world of finance. Sylwia is head of Banking and Financial Security System Unit at SGH Warsaw School of Economics. And she will be talking about new listings of companies on the NewConnect market in Poland. So, Sylwia, the floor is yours, and probably we will have some additional common things which we are interested about. Sylwia, please, the floor is yours.
Good morning, good evening, hello everybody. Thank you, Martin. My presentation is connected a little bit with business. My today's presentation on new listing of companies on the NewConnect market in the years 2007-2019. I work at more business, more financial unit, Institute of Risk and Financial Markets, Collegium of Management and Finance. First of all, I would like briefly talk about NewConnect and the role in capital market. In Poland, apart from the regulated market, there is also an alternative trading system, which is a platform for trading shares of mainly young and innovative small and medium enterprises called NewConnect. The market is designed for newly created or young companies with a relatively small capitalization, but with high technological and development potential. 606 entities debuted on the NewConnect market in the years 2007-2019. Mainly barriers in access to financing faced by enterprises at the early stages of their development make the NewConnect market an attractive place for acquisition of capital for these entities. Furthermore, the issuers on the NewConnect market have to meet more liberal requirements as compared to the Warsaw Stock Exchange's main trading floor. For example, as compared to the regulated market, companies listed on the NewConnect market have less information obligations, such as, for instance, lack of need to submit quarterly financial reports. My study, especially attention, will be directed to shaping of issue price of the company shares as compared to their price at the closing of the first day of their trading. The research uses the data obtained from the Warsaw Stock Exchange yearbooks. At the end of 2019, 375 companies were listed on the NewConnect. A year before, this was 387 companies, whereas the most companies were listed in 2013, as many as 445 companies. During the period of analysis, the biggest number of new listings, it was 172 debuts, were recorded in 2011. Data in this table indicate that after 2011, the number of new listings on the NewConnect market has decreased substantially. Companies also required less capital, and the share of IPO in the capitalization of companies in 2011 was even below 2%, and in the following years the number was decreasing. At the same time, the capitalization of companies listed on the NewConnect, despite a smaller number of new listings, is at similar level in years 2014-2019. Due to higher investment risk on the NewConnect market as compared to Warsaw Stock Exchange regulated market, resulting among others from conducting more than 90% of issues in the form of private placement, I analyzed the fluctuations of the issue price of companies' shares in comparison with the share at closing of the first day of trading of the company shares on the NewConnect market. This chart presents the set result. During the analyzed period, 150 newly listed companies on the market reached the share issue price more than a half higher, and the securities as many as 50 companies were traded at double issue price or more. Whereas among the newly listed companies on the NewConnect market, many issuers recorded also the decrease of share price. It's here below. Even 6 companies observed a loss exceeding 50% of issue price at the end of company's debut on the NewConnect market. On the slide, next table presents an immediate return, which is the difference between the share issue price and the price achieved by the company at closing of the session on the first day of trading its shares on the market. Closing price on the first day of trading of newly listed companies which debuted on the NewConnect market with the price below 1 Polish zlotys per share increased by over 100% in case of 99 companies, and decreased in case of 34 entities in the same row. The share below 1 Polish zlotys are also called grosz companies. Change of the share price by 1 grosz, it means 0.01 Polish zlotys, means that the change by at least 1%. The analysis indicates that the share of 416 newly listed companies on NewConnect market were undervalued. Furthermore, the average change of share price at the end of first day of trading decreases when the share price increases. Overvaluation, on the other hand, of securities concerns 144 companies, and issue price of shares of 46 companies has not changed at the end of the first day of trading on the market. Next, I am going to show you the average value of securities introduced to NewConnect market by companies depending on the share issue price. In case of 149 companies with share issue price below 1 Polish zlotys, an average share issue value was at level above 2 million zlotys, whereas the securities of 189 companies which with an average share issue value at level over 8 million Polish zlotys had the issue price equal or exceeding 5 Polish zlotys. So as the issue price increases, the average value of issue increases also, but the number of issue decreases. Apart from this higher price, this 189 companies which set the issue price at 5 zlotys or more, and it is about 30% of total issuers in the NewConnect market. To sum up, what is important from my research, establishing the NewConnect market led to the growth of acquisition of financing on the capital market, young, innovative, small, medium enterprises in the years 2007-2011. In the subsequent years, the number of new listed decreased, which doesn't confirm a significant role of this market in financing enterprises. The result of research conducted as well, that on the NewConnect market in the years 2007-2019, this confirmation the predominant role of issue on undervaluated securities. And what is important, as the issue price increases, the average value of issuers, but the number of issues decreases. So it was my last slide. I think that the time is okay, so thank you very much.
Sylwia, thank you very much for your interesting presentations. And here we have some other view on the business environment, because probably there is still some opportunity on the NewConnect market, because what you said, Sylwia, is that the number of companies which were listed on the NewConnect market decreased in the last years. Okay, so probably we could this could be something of importance to us. Thank you very much for your presentation, and please wait with us as the other speakers till the last session of Q&As. And now the final presentation for today, by which will be done by Mrs. Ania Masłoń-Oracz. Ania, thank you that you are with us. You have presented your paper together with Justyna Jarząbska, and you will be talking about the situation in Africa. I have to tell you with pride that Ania is also our rector's plenipotentiary for collaboration with Africa. So we will have some trip to that continent now. Ania, the floor is yours.
Thank you so much, Marcin, for introduction and for being here today with you guys. Good morning, good afternoon, hello from wherever you are. So I would be closer to the presentation of Sonja and Marysia than to Sylwia. Actually, as you can see, like even in my first slide, I'm seeing myself as SDGs activist. When you do the projects in Africa, you have to be SDGs activist, and you have to understand how to fight inequality. And thank you, Sonja, for your presentation, as actually I've never ever thought of how to use new taxes to combat inequality. So for me, it's like, it was really inspiring, and I would really would like to have further discussion with you, as it may be, you know, the one of the point how to fight those all inequalities. So actually, COVID-19 pandemic, current outlook and prospects for the future. Marysia said that COVID is opportunity. I partly agree with that, as by example of many countries in Africa, like for example in Kenya or in Nigeria, many of the new startups and entrepreneurship start their businesses, and especially in health businesses, because of the cutting value chains, they were just starting producing, you know, kind of the elements that can help in health businesses. So yes, it can be opportunity, but on the other hand, in all those emerging markets, COVID-19 pandemic I will show you some statistics that it's not like that COVID-19 pandemic caused all those troubles in Africa, but all those lockdowns that different countries put into the society. So actually, as a starting point, we can see that Sub-Saharan Africa is still in a grip of health and economic emergency. A year ago, we can say that most African countries swiftly implemented national lockdowns to contain the virus and spare the region from the worst of the crisis. Saying that, and from my colleagues from the continent, these national lockdowns, it doesn't look like here in Poland or in Europe or maybe in the United States. Guards and police were used to actually keep the people in the villages, in the houses. And if someone just went on the street, they were using guns and stuff like that. So it was absolutely kind of tremendous disaster in many parts in Africa. As I need to say one thing, that those most of those people, they are like the people from the bottom of economic pyramid. So they live for the $1 per day. So their daily life usually looks like that every day they have to go and work, pick up some stuff, sell to feed their families. If they were, close at their houses, I mean, it's not like the houses like we are having here. So most of them died not because of the COVID, but they died because of the poverty and the lack of food and stuff like that. So the situation looks totally different in all emerging markets, and especially in Africa. Obviously, because of the time of today's presentation, I will not tackle the whole countries and how it looks like, in 49 out of 55 countries in Africa, as it's not possible. So I'll just present a few general statistics, how it looks like right now. And the good point is that a lot of new things is also happening at the continent that may help after the pandemic. So the crucial point is that most countries entered the second wave in a much worse position than the first, with depleted fiscal and monetary buffers, shrinking resources with which to protect the vulnerable, and additionally millions thrown into poverty. Compared with the first wave, therefore, the containment measures implemented during the second wave were far more diverse. And the first cases of the COVID pandemic were seen in Egypt and in Nigeria in February last year. But when you compare it to global comparison of case death, Africa looks not so high. And of course, you can see and you can read in different publications that it's probably due to lack of the tested, and there's like a lot of voices that they don't have tested. That is like the youngest population, like with the average age of like 20 years old, while in Europe we have like 40 years, and due to that we don't have all those cases of COVID and death and or active cases. But still, as I said, more harm did all those lockdowns, which was done by governments, than COVID pandemic in Africa. Marysia also mentioned that digitalization can help in fighting poverty. Surprisingly, we haven't actually talked about what we are going to present today. So I'm so happy that more or less our presentation covers the more important issues that may help in recovering, after pandemic. So actually, pandemic in Africa specifically, the high prevalence of informal employment has been particularly affected by the social distancing, measuring, implement effort to control the spread of COVID-19, and by the disruption of trade, particularly in services such as tourism and travel, which are important sources of revenues for African countries. We need to remember that we usually go for our holiday to Mombasa, to Diani Beach, to Zanzibar. None of those trips were made by us. So most of the countries suffer from that. So actually, and this particularly shift that projected by the World Banks as a result of the pandemic, economic growth in sub-Saharan Africa would decline from 2.4% in 2019 to between 2.1% and minus 5.1% in 2020. Saying that, we know that actually without digitalization and jobs, we would not help those people who were actually left behind. They don't have any social security system, they don't have any health insurance, they don't have any help from anyone. So actually, according to this World Bank, recession, the Africa is going to be in the first recession in 25 years, driving up to 40 million people into extreme poverty across the continent and erasing at least 5 years of progress in fighting poverty. So current outlook and prospect for the future. I would say that the downturn in economic activity will cost the region at least $115 billion US in output losses in 2020. These numbers have been driven to an extent by resources-intensive countries, particularly metal and oil exporters. Diverse economies expected more moderate declines. And African continent is particularly vulnerable to the economic impact of COVID-19. The ILO estimates that over a third of economic activity on the continent is informal. So that means that it's very negatively impacted by the social distancing measures and shutdowns, which becomes necessary as a means to prevent the spread of COVID-19. The good point is that starting from the 1st of January this year, the African continent free trade area just were actually signed and ratified by most of the countries in Africa. And actually, that means that PACT connects 1.3 billion people with a combined gross domestic product valued at $3.4 trillion US. So as the global economy is turbulent due to the COVID-19 pandemic, creation of the vast and the biggest right now continental agreement and regional market is a major opportunity to help African countries diversify their export, accelerate growth, and attract foreign divestment. That's actually only one thing that I found as the way to fight consequences of the pandemic. Just a few facts regarding Africa and some of the investments that can be done through and how we can help. Like Africa has the richest solar resources on the planet. Less than 1% of global capacity is used. So it's like this green energy, what Marysia was saying about the SDGs. So in Africa, we can just, we should tackle, like increased energy supply would allow to move some production facilities to the continent. That obviously also help in access to electricity, which in terms will help in better education. As you kids just they don't have any access to electricity, and that's the simple thing that they just cannot learn. And fighting unemployment, I would say that that's the most important thing that we should do all together right now. And this is like the thank you in several African languages. I don't know if you are familiar with that, but my favorite, obviously, in Swahili, Asante for today, and hope the best. And I'm waiting for Q&A questions, as I have a lot of questions for Sylwia, Sonja, and Marysia. Thank you so much.
Anya, big thanks and congratulations for also a very interesting and insightful presentation. So now I would like to open the Q&A session. So please, if anyone wants to ask a question to one of your presenters, feel free to do so now. Any volunteers at the beginning? Anya, you said you have some questions to the other presenters. You
yes,
can start, probably.
Yes, Marcin. If there's no one to ask, I would just first question to Sylwia. As you know, I'm not quite familiar with the area of your research. I just tackle one thing from presentation, that it's not significant role that NewConnect in financing new companies. So from your research, actually new companies and startups, they just don't look for this finance from the NewConnect in Poland? How is it?
No, actually. Nowadays, many companies try to issue their shares and their IPO on NewConnect, but many of them fail. Generally, it is easier to issue for small companies, especially to issue shares to make an IPO on the NewConnect market, because, as I said, it is not so much obligation. It's also connected with the capital of the company, because if you would like to capitalization of the company is lower than 15 million zlotys, then you don't have, that's not possibility to go for a regulated market, as it's mean Warsaw Stock Exchange main market. So smaller company has no chance. They have to issue their shares on the NewConnect market. And also NewConnect market is better because there is lower obligatory, as for example, prospectus, you can issue memorandum, and you have instead of public offer, you can issue your shares and introduce IPO, introduce shares via private placement. Private placement, it means that offer is only for individual 149 investors, namely. It is lower capital for company, higher cost, but shorter time to prepare this offer. So mostly many companies, if they are not on alert list, for example, there is in liquidity, on there are in bankruptcy, or this is like M&A transaction, they would like to change the market from NewConnect, and they would like to be listed on the main traded market. It means Warsaw Stock Exchange main trading floor. So it depends. There are many companies which are really small. So it was 2011, it was the year which was many listings on the NewConnect market, but it was the third year of existing NewConnect market in Poland, so it was something new. Nowadays, there are also another possibility to possess capital for startups, for small innovative companies. It's not also the alternative trading system. Also, there's a business angel, some venture capital. So it's many another ideas. Also good ideas is to buy another company who is listed on the Warsaw Stock Exchange, who is small, and change the names, and via this transaction to possess capital, to possess investors, and promotion from being listed on the main trading floor. So it's not so like in my presentation only, because also there are some very important and nowadays sectors, for example, gaming. So it is very important on the Warsaw Stock Exchange main trading floor, as well as on the NewConnect market. Also in this week, it was some IPO. I don't remember, Vivo Games or something like this, this name of the companies. So many companies tries, but I think that now is more conscious, because it is 2011. It is not so conscious, many companies, and that's the reason that fail. Yes, because they only just to try to possess capital, but many of them was in bankruptcy. Yes, it was like this grosz companies. Yes, so it is very small. Small price per shares, and that was alert list, and that's why afterwards it was, for example, liquidated. So I think that nowadays it's more conscious. That's why that smaller number of IPOs on the NewConnect, but more successful. So after being on NewConnect traded, and if company has capitalization 12 million złotych, is the good way to change the market and be traded on the Warsaw Stock Exchange floor. So I also made some research in this field, and if you would like to, Ania, I invite you.
Of course I will. Of course I will.
Okay.
May I ask a second question to Sonja? Marcin, may I?
Yes, please.
Ask second question to Sonja. Sorry guys, I'm gonna monopolize Q&A session. Sorry for that. Sonja, your perspective of these new taxes to combat inequality, what do you like? I didn't get like, what do you understand by saying new taxes? Like something totally new from this tax system within the countries, like totally, like, for example, well, I don't really like, I don't understand the definition like that you are proposing, like totally new from the taxation system that we all know.
Well, that's kind of the question, right? That's I don't know, and I don't think anybody really knows. So I think what people have done in the past is we see inequality, and it's super easy to just say, hey, you know what? One way to combat inequality is just to make taxes more progressive. And there's two ways of doing that, right? You can either just make the income tax system more progressive, like the higher incomes have a higher tax rate, or you can say we can introduce, or we can expand our wealth transfer tax systems, and different countries have different wealth transfer taxes. Here in the United States, we basically almost completely abolished the wealth transfer taxes. As state and gift, it's still kind of there, but really not. I mean, almost nobody has to pay any, because the exemption is so big that unless you have like $11 million of estate, then you're out exempt. So no, most people don't have that much. But so the possibilities, you can say, well, we can do that, or we can introduce new taxes. Like, for example, in Switzerland, as I said, Switzerland is not taxing capital gains. I don't know why, but they're not. And there is a proposal out there that says we should tax capital gains. And what's funny is that some of the arguments against it are, oh, that's too complicated, we can't do that. I'm like, we do that in the United States. Capital gains are being taxed. It's not that hard. I mean, why can't you do that? But the question is, does this actually help? Because from what I've seen in some of the proposals is, unless you make it so high that it really shifts the wealth or the income to the lower income individuals, it won't really make a difference. And so I'm not sure if the progressivity is the right approach. Another possibility, and that's what we see in Scandinavian countries, is we just need to broaden the tax base so the government has more revenues, and then the government can use those revenues to provide education. Education is a big thing. I think actually that's probably the biggest one. More education is going to help more than just shifting income and wealth right now. And healthcare in some countries. I mean, some countries already have universal healthcare. The United States, not really. I mean, sort of, but not really yet. So healthcare is a big deal. And then, yeah, also provide some sort of social safety net for retirement age, like over 60, over 70, whatever, so people don't have to worry about, oh, I have to work until I die, right? So, but the government needs money to do that, and in the United States, we have not been covering government expenditures for years now, and Elliot knows that better than I do, because he always puts these awesome graphs on social media where he researches that. So the United States has been going into debt more and more and more, because they can't even cover the expenditures right now. And compared to other countries, the United States is not really covering that much, right? So maybe that's a better solution. I don't know, but that's the question, right? Why? But if the goal is to reduce inequality, I mean, or at least not make it go bigger, I guess we can agree to that. We don't want more inequality. Maybe we want to reduce it in some countries. Maybe some countries are fine, but we don't want more. We want to go down. If that's the goal, how can we get there? Are taxes a possibility, or maybe there are better ways to do it? I don't know. I don't know the answer to that, but I would like to know the answer to that.
Sonja, very big thanks. Very big thanks for your answer, and also big thanks to Sylwia. What I have on my mind is that probably there is going to be like new opportunities for joint research, which are emerging on our eyes, right? Because look, when I listen to some data about the NewConnect floor on Warsaw Stock Exchange, I understand that there's a lot of opportunity, because we do see that the listings are on the decrease. So probably the stock exchange could arrange for something new and could attract more small and medium-sized companies to the floor. And on the other hand, we see those attempts to do something about to make a world a better place, right? Because this is what is behind the SDGs agenda. And we talk about inequality. There is some other threads of discussion which you guys have mentioned. So an interesting discussion, I believe. Guys, if I could also ask maybe for some comment from a person who has not spoken today but is with us, namely Frank, Professor Frank Fossen. Frank, how do you look at this discussion and the presentations, and maybe you could suggest some ideas for research to guys here? Hi.
I don't know if Frank can talk. He might need to ask somebody else to unmute him. Because I don't know. Holly, maybe you can take care of Frank, get him to talk.
Okay, yeah, thank you. I couldn't unmute myself, but now I was allowed to do so. Yeah, thanks for interesting presentations. I have maybe a question or a comment for Sonja's presentation. I think it would be interesting. You mentioned now you have cross-sectional data, and you mentioned it would be interesting to extend the time dimension. I think so too, because it's also interesting to distinguish between cross-sectional inequality and mobility, right? We do not worry about inequality as much as long as there's mobility. So as long as people have the opportunity to move up and down the ladder, because then some inequality can actually provide incentives, right? For example, for entrepreneurs to work hard. But if there's no mobility, so there's no chance to move up, then there are also no incentives. And to get there, you need, of course, time series or panel data. And when you think about taxation, then there are also different types of taxes that become relevant potentially. For example, and you mentioned in your presentation, the inheritance tax that would increase mobility across generations, right? So if you have dynasties of rich families and they remain rich forever, that's problematic. And then they also increase their political influence. And the inheritance tax could contribute to redistributing wealth from one generation to the other and give new opportunities maybe for the next generation. Just some random thoughts here.
And what is your view on the SDGs agenda? Because from our end, it seems like many researchers start talking a lot about it, and it's a hot topic here in Poland. How do you comment on this? Okay, we will see how it evolves. Anyways, good. Anyone willing to ask some question?
Frank, you should be able to now. Sorry about that.
Oh yeah, thank you. Now it works again. Yeah, I don't really have comments on that. So yeah, it's just very interesting for me to hear that and to hear your presentations and your thoughts on that. So maybe I've talked quite a lot, so maybe someone else has a question.
Okay, thank you, Frank, for this comment. Yes, anyone else willing to ask a question to one of our panelists or willing to comment, please? Okay, so maybe I will have one more question to Sonja. Namely, you say that when discussing this topic about inequality and the potential role of taxation, you mentioned also culture. So could you maybe elaborate a little bit more on this? Because when we think about economic life and everything that happens in those different economies in the world, culture also matters. So how do you try to have it integrated in your research?
Yes, and this is kind of like where I'm sort of stuck with trying to think how to frame the whole idea. I think there's possibly some sort of interaction effect, because I think some cultures are more likely to accept inequalities than others. And so here's my, and I think this has a little bit to do with me now having lived in this country for, hold on, I need to count, almost 22 years, but I'm not, I didn't grow up here. And I feel like in the United States, there is still this, by a lot of people, even though the data suggests otherwise, a lot of people believe they're going to make it and they're going to get there. And so they don't want taxes, or they don't want taxes on the rich, because at some point they're going to be rich and they don't want to be taxed. Even though there's no evidence actually suggesting that this is going to be true, there's still this like, and so I feel like inequality is more accepted in some countries than in others. And so I kind of feel maybe culture impacts inequality as well. But the problem with that is, so I think there's possible interaction effect. But the problem is what Frank just said about having time series data would help. Culture doesn't change that much. So as soon as you introduce some sort of culture variable, you kind of lose the time series possibility. Now we're getting into the methodology problems and not the question, like the research question. But I don't know how to look at that in a way that it can actually, he can actually get some data. I mean, I can throw out hypotheses and research questions all day long. I have lots of them, but I just still don't know how to actually then look at some data. So if anybody has some ideas, please send them my way. I'm really interested in that topic, but I just don't know, because once culture doesn't change, right? So you have the Hofstadter metrics, and there's some other culture metrics, but you can't say, okay, we'll measure each year because they're going to be, unless you like, 20, 30 years back, it's going to be the same, right? So yeah, anybody have any ideas? I welcome them. But that's my viewpoint. I think culture does impact inequality as well. Like, for example, if we say, oh yeah, Scandinavian countries, they're so happy, because I think Denmark has the highest happiness or something, even though it's always dark there and cloudy. But they're so happy because, and the reason they're so happy is because government provides for them. They have like free daycare, they have free healthcare, they have free education, they have free higher education. Government does all that. But yeah, government does all that, but government also taxes a lot, right? They pay a lot of taxes in the Scandinavian countries. Well, if you would do that here in the United States, that would not work. People would just not, they would not pay their taxes. It would never go. We have a democratic country. All those tax proposals, it would never fly. It would just not get accepted. So then the government doesn't have the means to do that. So yeah, it would be nice, but there's, it's not happening. So I don't know. And so that means we can't reduce inequality by government providing more social welfare to some people who need it here, because the government doesn't have the money to do that.
Yes, I think it's a little bit of a challenge, because we can tell to our fellow friends and scholars in UNR, at the moment we are starting with the new grant, Gospostratek, and within that grant we are trying to understand different environments and constraints for doing business in different countries. So it's going to be also a challenge for us how to measure and make comparisons within this culture dimension, kind of, right? Because what makes us happy in one country probably is not happiness trigger in some other country. So there are differences. Yes, interesting thing. Okay, any other comments or questions?
I don't know if Elliot's still around. I'm assuming that he has some insight too, because he, as I mentioned, he does a lot of that research, or looks at this kind of data all the time. I've seen a lot of his graphs.
But who was mentioned by you?
Elliot Parker, is he still?
Elliot. Elliot was at the beginning of this session, but I think he's no longer with us. Maybe he joined the other session. So maybe we can reach to him sometime later to ask. Okay, so I think that we are slowly approaching to the end of the session. I would like to thank again all the presenters for your time and your willingness to share some insights and as well as research proposal or research output with us. And I hope that it was meaningful to all participants of this session. So thank you very much for participating, and I hope you will see ourselves during one of the upcoming sessions tomorrow. Take care and bye-bye.
Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.